doors be open, que l'on ouvre les portes.
Merci beaucoup, Andy.
Statements by members. Déclaration de députés. The honourable member from West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, today is recognized by the United Nations as International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. The horrific toll of the most recent Israel-Hamas war is yet another example of the ongoing cycle of violence and injustice that has tragically gripped the region for decades. This has highlighted the need for a comprehensive resolution that delivers a hopeful future for Palestinians and long-term stability for the region. As is Canada's long-standing position, in which the UN declared by resolution in 1947, this means the creation of a viable Palestinian state living peacefully alongside an Israeli state. For too long, the Palestinian people have been victimized by occupation and blockades, as well as a governing regime that disregards the rights and safety of its own people. Today is a reminder of the work that Canada and the entire international community owes to the Palestinian people to ensure they have equal access to the rights and freedoms that so many take for granted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charleswood St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Tomorrow is Jewish Refugee Day, marking the expulsion of more than 850,000 Jews from their homes in Iran and throughout the Middle East and North Africa. In the years leading up to the birth of the State of Israel in 1948, Jews were subjected to systemic anti-Semitism and evicted from their homes. They were subjected to arbitrary arrest, torture, and murder. This forced migration was marked by religious persecution and even genocide. Many Jews and their families found safe harbor in Israel and here in Canada. During this trying time for both the State of Israel and Jews here in Canada, it is vital that we do not forget that Jewish communities had existed in these regions for millennia, contributing enormously to the culture, growth, and success of Arab nations. This year, B'nai B'rith will again be commemorating these refugees. A virtual gathering will be held tomorrow at 4 p.m. I invite members to take part as we commemorate this important part of Jewish history. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, November 29 is the internationally recognized Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. Given the recent conflict in the region, which has resulted in the deaths of over 14,000 innocent Palestinian civilians, including over 6,000 children, this year's event is particularly poignant. I continue to call for a permanent ceasefire, a return of all hostages to their family, and for badly needed humanitarian aid to reach all the people of Gaza. And I pray for everyone can put their differences aside and work towards a just, equitable, and peaceful two-state solution. Violence is never the answer. I yearn for the day when two peoples can live side by side in peace and prosperity. Tonight, led by Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim staffers, we will gather outside the eternal flame on Parliament Hill in peace and solidarity with the Palestinian people, and I hope all of you will join us.
The honourable member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, one of the biggest suspense stories in Quebec show business has finally come to an end. We know who will replace Gino Chouinard at the helm of Salut Bonjour next year. And the announcement makes me very happy because Eve-Marie Lortie has been chosen. I'm also happy because at last a woman is being entrusted with hosting a morning show, something which still doesn't happen enough, if you ask me. There are many good men and women who could have been offered these big shoes to fill, but none as kind, human, generous, talented and approachable as Eve-Marie. In another life, I had the privilege of working with her on occasion. I even made recipes with her on Qu'est-ce qui mijote, the cooking show I was hosting at the time when she was my guest. I was always happy to meet her, as is the case for all those who are lucky enough to cross her path. Eve-Marie Lortie at the helm of Salut Bonjour is a natural progression of things. Quebecers will once again have a warm and friendly presence to accompany them as they start their day. A bit like having a friend over, having a coffee with us. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, bravo, Eve-Marie. Mr. Speaker, I never thought I'd be looking forward to Gino's retirement, but now...
The honourable member from Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, today is the United Nations International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. For over 70 years, Palestinians are living under the occupation, robbed of their fundamental rights with no regard to human dignity. This is the most terrible year, with thousands of Palestinians, including thousands of children, killed in front of our eyes, with Western democracies not taking any measures to prevent it. Today, I and millions of Canadians are angry, frustrated, and feeling helpless with our unsuccessful advocacy to get Canada to change its position and do what is just and right. I call on Canada to ask for a permanent ceasefire and take the right step forward, starting with the recognition of the sovereign state of Palestine for a two-state solution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, I am heartbroken and I am angry. I'm angry that yet another family has lost a loved one to suicide. Carson Cleland was just like any other 12-year-old boy from Prince George. He was involved in sports. He was active in his community. But he fell prey to a sadistic predator whose only motivation was to do harm. Ryan, Carson's dad, has urged us all to do better, to be better, to make sure parents talk to their kids, check their internet history, have those tough conversations. 12 hours. From the predator's first point of contact with Carson to Carson's death, it was 12 hours. That's an hour for each year of Carson's life. Carson's dad told me it happened so fast. Parents need to know just how fast this can happen. His mom, Nicola, told me that we need to have a safe place for our children to grow and actually be children. We need to find these predators faster. When do we as families get closure? Mr. Speaker, we need to be more vigilant when we're protecting our kids. Since 2015, there's been an 825% increase in the making and distribution of child pornography. We have laws in place, and we need to enforce them. And Mr. Speaker, we need to provide law enforcement with the tools and the resources they need to bring these bastards to justice and provide justice for the victims.
I thank the honourable member for making that statement. I would encourage all members, of course, to be reflective of the language which we use in this place, despite how heartfelt and how sincere I think all of us feel in regards to that issue. The honourable member from Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake.
Mr. Speaker, last Friday I was pleased to join the Minister of Veteran Affairs and the Minister of National Defence and our host, Russell Gross, the Executive Director of the Black Cultural Centre in my riding, in order to announce dedicated funding to commemorate the legacy of the No. 2 Construction Battalion. The event included a presentation of the first ever No. 2 Construction Battalion camp flag to the Black Culture Centre for Nova Scotia for commemoration. The $2.25 million investment over 5 years will fund commemorative activities, educational materials, and community war memorials. This announcement follows up on last year's historic apology to the descendant of the battalion by the Prime Minister for the systematic anti-black racism they experienced throughout and after the war. This fund will ensure that the legacy of the battalion lives on for future generations. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Bravo.
The honourable member from Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years under this Prime Minister, housing costs have doubled, Canadians are close to a paycheck away from going broke, and there has been a 52% increase in monthly visits to food banks in Kootenay, Columbia alone. I will address a pressing issue impacting the hardworking farmers in my riding. The individuals work tirelessly cultivating crops, raising herds, are facing huge challenges with the rise of the carbon tax. The current fixed market rate at which they sell their products is not providing them with the flexibility to absorb the escalating costs imposed by this tax. It is imperative that we recognize the plight of the farmers and work towards finding solutions that ensure their success. It is our duty to address the concerns of the hardworking people who toil day in, day out to put food on our tables. More taxes, fees, half measures are continuously introduced by this NDP Liberal government, but no issues are being resolved. Mr. Speaker, we all need to support our farmers and ranchers. Support C-234.
L'honorable député de Sherbrooke.
Monsieur le Président, en juillet.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last Thursday, I met La Montagne staff over 45 years. This chocolate factory became an essential part of our region. I'm always proud to see their success. They have been part of Sherbrooke for many years. Chocolat La Montagne has seen a huge uprise. They now export with $1.2 million from Economic Development Canada. This family business will be able to increase its productivity to continue conquering other markets and for tomorrow's challenges. Once again, congratulations to Monsieur Denis La Montagne and all his team. And don't hesitate to taste their delicious chocolates.
The honourable member from Milton.
Mr. Speaker, it's said that you truly realize who your friends are when you need them most. Well, the Conservatives made it abundantly clear last week that they can't be trusted to support Ukraine, our friend and ally, when the chips are down. Last week, every Conservative voted against the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. It's a shocking new low for the Conservative Party of Canada. The leader of the Conservative Party is importing a MAGA brand, American-style politics into Canada, something that is not welcome in our country. Now they're tying themselves into knots in a feeble attempt to try to justify their shameful vote against a bill to help support the rebuilding of our friend and ally, Ukraine. Canada's support for Ukraine should have been unanimous in this House, but just like Donald Trump, the leader of the Conservatives is cozying up to Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. Ukrainian, Canadian Congress, and President Zelensky asked Canadian MPs to support. You can't allow that, Speaker. Bill's going blue. Milton's going blue. We're done. That member can't speak against it. Withdraws that. Withdraw. Apologize to
À l'ordre. Colleagues, this week there have been a number of statements which have called into question some members have called into question the allegiances of other members, which is frankly not acceptable. I'm going to ask the honourable member to withdraw that part of his statement and then allow him to continue with that statement. So I'll ask the honourable member to rise in this spot and to do the honourable thing and to withdraw that statement, and then he will have 13 seconds left on the clock. The honourable member from Milton.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement.
I am going to ask the honourable member from Milton. I see that the honourable member from Milton has the earpiece in his ear. I'm going to ask the honourable member from Milton to withdraw that remark, and then he will have 13 seconds on the clock to finish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I withdraw that remark. The Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement represents Canada's opportunity to assist in the rebuilding of Ukraine, and it's utterly disappointing to see the Conservatives stand opposed to that. Ukraine can continue to count on Canada on this side of the House.
Hear, hear.
honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
After 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, his billion-dollar green slush fund is engulfed in corruption. His hand-picked board chair was caught funneling $220,000 to her own company and then paid herself $120,000. Then she and the CEO both resigned in disgrace. We learned yesterday that another board member funneled millions of taxpayer dollars to not one, not two, not three, but 4 companies that she personally had an interest in. The Liberals knew about the corruption and ineligible payments, and they did absolutely nothing. One senior government official called it an ad scam level payout. Meanwhile, whistleblowers are afraid of professional and legal reprisals because these Liberals refuse to offer them any protection. At every level of this Prime Minister's green slush fund, there is corruption and more insiders getting paid. With an Auditor General investigation, an Ethics Commissioner investigation, it's clear that this Prime Minister just isn't worth the cost. Conservatives will keep fighting to expose Liberal corruption and to find out who got rich.
The honourable member from Medicine Hat, Carlston, Warner.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost as life has become so expensive that Canadians are having to choose between eating and other necessities. So far in 2023, more Canadians have gone to food bank than at any time in our recent history. Locally in Medicine Hat, the Root Cellar Food and Wellness Hub, which is our food bank, has a brown bag lunch program that feeds 1,500 children every single day who come to school without lunch. In fact, the Root Cellar is feeding a total of 4% of our community and report a 33% increase in food bank usage over the last 2 years alone. These numbers continue to grow with an average of 200 new clients each and every month, mostly two-income families, seniors, and students. Food bank clients overwhelmingly state the reason for needing to access emergency food is the inflationary rise in the cost of living. These are real-life consequences to the economic crisis this government has inflicted on Canadians. Speaker, it's time for the Prime Minister to do Canadians a favor. Take a walk in the snow.
Hear, 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 hear.
The honourable member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Confident countries invest in their workers. Confident countries invest in their future. We are confident in Canada. We are not only investing in Canadians, but we also continue to attract transformational investments. More than $40 billion in the less than 3 years, and thousands of good-paying jobs now and for years to come. Volkswagen, Stellantis, Northvolt, GM, Umicore. The world is looking to Canada and choosing Canada. Conservatives have given up on Canada's auto industry. They are putting their partisan games and misinformation ahead of good middle-class jobs for Canadians. Aujourd'hui, le Canada est le seul pays occidental à
Today, Canada is the only Western country with an end-to-end supply chain for electric vehicles. Canadian automakers and their workers are making vehicles not just for Canadians, but for markets around the world. We on this side of the House recognise that Canada has vast reserves of essential minerals, clean energy and expertise to continue producing the vehicles Canadians want and that are good for our environment.
We will always stand by and with Canadian workers and our roaring Canadian auto industry.
The honourable member from Vancouver East.
More than 2 million innocent lives remain trapped in Israel's siege of Gaza, trying to survive amid the most horrific and inhumane conditions. Thousands of children have been killed. As a mother, my heart aches for those families. Survivors are being deprived of clean drinking water, food, medicine, sanitation, fuel, or electricity. More than 1.7 million Palestinians are displaced from their homes in their ancestral homeland. Among them are people with disabilities, women, children, seniors, and beloved families of hundreds of people in Canada. The Australian government has enacted special immigration measures, including a special visa program to prioritize visa assessment for those seeking to depart Gaza. Canada must do the same. I am calling on the Liberals to immediately enact special immigration measures to facilitate the evacuation of extended family members of Canadians and permanent residents of Gaza, and to renew my call for a permanent ceasefire.
The honourable member from Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, goaltender Marc-André Fleury, already a Stanley Cup and a Vizina Trophy winner, gave us one more reason to be proud of him. It was the tribute to First Nations night last Friday in Minnesota. And the Sorel Stopper, whose wife Veronique is of Indigenous origin and wanted to wear a special mask by Dakota Nation artist Cole Red Horse Taylor, covered in flowers for fleurie, flowery in French. In typical Dakota style, it was to be sold to raise money for a charity that supports Indigenous families. Except that the National League threatened Fleury with a hefty fine were he to go ahead, as Commissioner Bettman prohibits this kind of tribute worn personally by a player. But when Marc-André Fleury jumped on the ice that very evening, he was proudly wearing that mask. Knowing how to have a spine is already an important technical skill for a goalkeeper, but knowing to have a spine as a human is even more impressive. Bravo, Marc-André Fleury.
The honourable member from South Glengarry-Stormont-Dundas.
Canadians are increasingly frustrated as they watch Liberal-appointed senators stall and delay our common-sense Conservative bill that would carve out a much-needed carbon tax exemption for our Canadian farmers. Farm businesses are seeing their carbon taxes totaling over $100,000 per year just to use propane and natural gas to dry their crops. The worst part is that the worst is yet to come, because the NDP Liberal coalition will quadruple the carbon tax. So enough with the delay and games, Mr. Speaker. Canadian farmers are facing a $1 billion carbon tax bill from this Prime Minister that no one can afford. Food banks are at record use, 2 million people per month. After 8 years, Canadians know this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost, because as farmers feed cities, Canadians know that this Prime Minister just wants to tax them all even more.
The honourable member from Surrey Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Métis Nation British Columbia represents the Section 35 rights of over 24,000 Métis citizens, advocates for over 98,000 self-identified Métis, and represents 39 Métis chartered communities across British Columbia. MNBC strives to promote a strong future for their Métis people in British Columbia, where their rich Métis culture, heritage, and languages thrive. Métis communities achieve strong socioeconomic outcomes, and Métis rights as an Indigenous peoples are recognized. On April 13, 2017, Prime Minister Trudeau, Métis Nation President Cartier, and the presidents of MNBC governing members signed the Canada Métis Nation Accord during the first Métis Nation Crown Summit in Ottawa, marking a significant step toward a renewed government-to-government relationship based on the recognition of rights, respects, and partnership. I'm pleased to have the organization like MNBC headquartered in my beautiful riding of Surrey Centre, and today they are here in this gallery advocating for their people.
Oral questions, questions orales. L'honorable.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Never before have we had a Prime Minister who was so ashamed of his own economic update, and we now know why. Years after he said there would be no consequences from doubling the national debt, we now have a Prime Minister who's going to spend more next year on debt service than on health. Once again, why does the Prime Minister want to give more money to bankers than to nurses? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it would be more credible coming from the Leader of the Opposition if he hadn't spoken out against our historic deal to transfer $200 billion to the provinces over the coming years for health. We are here to invest in producing results for Canadians, but the Conservatives are just there for austerity and cutbacks. With respect to our economic statement, we've invested in housing, historic levels. We're helping bring down grocery prices, and we're investing in good careers in industries all across Canada. We will be there in a responsible way for Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Canadians who open their fridges only to find that there's no food in them, and they have to go to food banks. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, They're already experiencing austerity in their daily lives, and the Prime Minister wants to make things worse with another $20 billion in inflationary spending. He's increased inflation and interest rates at the expense of Canadians. Will he finally reverse his inflationary policies so that Canadians can eat? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I think the Leader of the Opposition's logic is a bit faulty. He rightly finds that Canadians are struggling to afford groceries, but he's proposing government austerity as the solution to help those families. But that's so far-fetched, Mr. Speaker. We are investing to help families. We're investing in housing. We're investing to bring down and stabilize grocery prices. We're investing in careers and jobs for the future. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party is voting against dental care for seniors, voting against assistance to companies that will help grow jobs. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So ashamed of his own economic update that he wants to avoid talking about it for the week that follows. So we can understand why. Next year, he wants to spend $53 billion on debt interest, a record-smashing amount that is higher than the amount we spend on health care. Works out to $3,000 for every Canadian family. According to according to the Bank of Nova Scotia, this is going to increase interest rates by 2 full percentage points, or $700 a year, directly attributable to this government's deficit spending. So will he get a control of himself and control of his spending so Canadians can get control of their mortgage costs?
Mr. Speaker, I will admit openly to you and to others in this House that the media didn't cover our fall economic statement as much as we would have liked last week, because they were so busy talking about what a terrible week the Conservative Party had on Ukraine, on allegations of terrorism, on attacking Stellantis and jobs in Southern Ontario. Yes, the media were totally wrapped up in the Leader of the Opposition's terrible week. But we stay focused on investing in housing for Canadians, on stepping up on more competition to helping grocery prices, and moving forward and creating great jobs and careers for Canadians for decades to come.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, maybe he should just give the media even more money to cover the news how he'd like it, Mr. Speaker, because we know he's so desperate to debate me on the carbon tax, a debate he's been losing badly. Canadians overwhelmingly want him to axe the tax. That's why he panicked and flip-flopped to take the tax off for a short time, and only for those people who are in a region where he's plummeting in the polls and his caucus is revolting. With 2 million Canadians forced to go to a food bank, will he stop thinking about buying himself better news coverage and start thinking about the Canadians who have to buy themselves better food?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting to hear the Conservative leader again attacking the media, particularly on a day where we stood up and arranged a deal with Google to make sure that local journalism, that independent journalism, that the work that our news media is going to do is going to be able to stand the test of time through this transforming times we live in. The Leader of the Opposition continues to want to stand with big data, with internet giants, to sidle up to his billionaire buddies down south. We're going to continue to stand up for local journalism, for the work that professionals do to support our democracy in small towns and communities right across the country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
On the carbon tax, because he knows that Canadians know they can't afford the cost of food, as he intends to continue raising taxes. And so instead, he tries to distract with media buyouts and by censoring views with which he disagrees. So will he have the courage to actually defend his carbon tax as 2 million people line up in bread lines like those we haven't seen since the Great Depression? And will he support our common sense bill to axe the tax on the farmers that feed us?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians right across the country, including and especially our hardworking farm families, are seeing the impact of climate change increasingly every single year. It has become glaringly obvious to everyone, except for certain MAGA conservatives, that the fight against climate change is a fight for the future of our economy. You cannot separate fighting climate change from growing good jobs and a strong economy into the future. And yet, that is exactly what the Conservatives continue to say. We put a price on pollution, we're putting more money back in Canadians' pockets, and we're creating great jobs for the long term.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, according to the media, the government is maintaining its refusal to launch a call for tenders for surveillance aircraft. Instead of a call for tenders, presumably on the basis of their analysis, it will be an American supplier. We've got nothing against Americans as long as it's fair. Have they ruled out a call for tenders? Have they ruled out Bombardier? And have they ruled out Quebec? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in these uncertain times, we have two main priorities. First of all, we need to ensure that our armed forces have the equipment they need to do their job. And we also need to ensure that there are good jobs in the aerospace industry for Canadians all across the country. Those are our two goals, and that's what we will continue to focus on. The ministers concerned will be making an announcement in due course. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. So we agree. We need security for the armed forces, and we need good jobs. Why rule out Bombardier? They can do the work. They're capable of it. This government is rejecting the modern Quebec and Canada in order to go with Boeing, the American company. We're not asking for preferential treatment. We're asking for a fair and equitable call for tenders. Will the Prime Minister step up as a statesman and say that what we read this morning is not true? There will be a call for tenders. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our Canadian Armed Forces need the equipment to do the job of keeping us safe, and we share our responsibilities with our allies to to protect a world, make it safer, and we need to invest in ways that will create good jobs and a good future for our aerospace industry in Quebec and all across Canada. Those are the priorities we share, and we will continue along those lines. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker.
The Prime Minister promised to pass legislation within the first 100 days to protect Canadians from toxic online content and to hold platforms accountable. Last month, a 12-year-old in Prince George, 12-year-old boy, took his own life in response to online sextortion. It's been 764 days since the government has sworn in, and more of these incidents have been happening every year. When will the government introduce the online harm bill to protect kids?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to protecting our kids, I think we all agree that we have to do everything we possibly can. And that is why we have spent such significant amount of time working with communities, including racialized communities, working with experts, moving forward in the right way to keep our kids safe from online harms, to keep them safe in the virtual world that more and more of us spend increasing amounts of time. We need to make sure we get it right. We need to make sure we get it right both for the grand principles of freedom of expression and freedom of assembly that are so important in our democracies, but also make it right for communities that are all too often subject to discrimination and marginalization. That's what we're...
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Is causing harm to kids. We need action.
The president of COP28 is looking to make oil deals with Canada. The minister says their discussions were only about climate, but his department refuses to say who is part of the Canadian delegation until after COP28. Is the Prime Minister sending the Minister of the Environment to Dubai to commit to eliminating fossil fuels or to sign new operating contracts? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We need to be careful about associating a tragedy that happened in Prince George with actions or inactions of any particular government. We understand how horrific this is for the family, for the community, and we will continue to work to make sure that kids across this country are protected. And that is why we are serious about moving forward in protecting from online harm. C'est un enjeu extrêmement sérieux.
It's a very serious issue, which we will always treat with the appropriate respect and responsibility. This is not, it's inappropriate to make accusations. This is a tragedy we all need to work on together.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Le Premier ministre aime éviter.
The Prime Minister likes to shirk responsibility for having doubled the cost of housing over 8 years. He's not worth the cost. So I will quote from Realtor.com in the U.S. in October 2023. This is the 6th consecutive month of lower rents. According to rentalspoint.ca in Canada, rents in Canada reached a new high. Why are rents dropping in the U.S. while they're going up more quickly than ever before in history here in Canada? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have launched our housing accelerator. We did that this fall, precisely to create more housing in Canada and bring down rents for all Canadians. It's an issue that builds on things we've been doing since 2017 and even before to invest in housing in Canada. And we understand that there's much more to do. We have a population that is growing faster than in the U.S., but I'm sure that the Leader of the Opposition is not talking out against immigration right now. We will stay there to build more housing, to grow our economy, and to grow our population at the same time. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister loves to blame others for the fact that he's doubled housing costs in 8 years. He's not worth the price of rent. But let me quote the organization Realtor.com in the United States. October 23rd marks the 6th month in a row of year-over-year rent declines. Rental.ca in Canada says, and I quote, for the 6th month in a row, asking rents in Canada hit a new high. Why, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, is rent going down in the States and up in Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, since 2015, we have been investing in housing in this country to make up for the 10 years of lost time when that member as Minister of Housing and a previous government got out of the business of building and supporting housing across this country. So we've done an awful lot, and we recognize there's more to do, which is why part of our fall economic statement was about investing even more in creating homes and unlocking the potential of this country. As for the difference between Canada and the United States, well, one of the differences is our population is growing much faster than the population growth in the United States. But I'm certain the Leader of the Opposition wasn't about to suggest he was anti-immigration, because we all know immigration creates jobs and prosperity, and that's what we're all for.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's the Prime Minister who brought up immigration. I was about to point out that in Canada, according to his housing agency, home construction is down 32% year over year. And in the United States, it's up 5%. It is true the Prime Minister has much more expensive federal government programs to build more government bureaucracy and less homes. Will he adopt our common sense plan to build homes, not just bureaucracy?
The The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we all know the mistrust and the distaste the Leader of the Opposition has for expert analysis and expert advice. That's particularly because the experts have roundly panned his approach on housing as not going to be able to create the housing that Canada needs. What are we doing? For example, concretely, we've talked about 9,000 housing units in Hamilton, 7,000 housing units in London, 44,000 housing units in Vaughan, 9,000 housing units in Halifax, and more to be created over the next few years. These are investments we're making that are delivering for Canadians right across the country, while he continues to propose cuts and austerity instead of the investments that Canadians need.
Hear, hear.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Gives home building numbers. He's talking about promises that have not been realized. For example, he promised in 2015, 8 years ago, that he would sell federal lands to build homes. Now, today, Radio-Canada reports that it takes 23 years for the government to dispose of lands and turn it into new homes. In fact, one project won't be done until the year 2038. How many generations of Canadians would have to survive long enough for the Prime Minister to realize any of the promises that he makes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that underscores the importance of being able to work constructively with municipalities to build those housings. And those numbers from the City of Ottawa are something that we're concerned with and are going to be working to make sure that they accelerate the construction of housing on federal lands. We are there for investing in more housing. We are there to release federal lands for the construction of housing. But instead of doing what the Leader of the Opposition says and picking fights with the municipalities, we will work with them to ensure that they are building faster. That's what our Housing Accelerator is all about, unlocking hundreds of thousands of new homes over the coming years.
Hear, hear.
What he's actually done is unlock hundreds of new photo ops at the expense of Canadian taxpayers. So, for example, he's now given $15 billion to the renamed and recycled Construction Loan Program. This is a program that has built less than half of its targeted promises, and the new money that he says will build homes will arrive in 2025. The new homes in 2028. Wow. Mr. Speaker, how many times would this Prime Minister have to be re-elected on his promises for housing for a new home to actually get built?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the irony is the Leader of the Opposition is attacking us for making announcements on thousands upon thousands of new units built across the country when he doesn't make any announcements at all because he has no plan. He is not sharing a plan to build more homes. He's not sharing a plan to invest in the economy. He is not sharing his approach on how to create more opportunities for Canadians while fighting climate change, while responding to the climate crisis. He just stands there and makes personal attacks and sneers at everything and says it's all broken instead of doing the hard work, rolling up our sleeves and delivering a real plan for the future of Canada.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The problem is with this Prime Minister, the future never comes. It's a promise that's always just around the corner. For example, his $4 billion housing accelerator has completed exactly 0 homes 2 years after it was announced. And here's why. The other day he announced a bunch of money in Halifax. And where did the money go, according to the city? To hire 29 new bureaucrats. Wow. The same bureaucrats that are blocking the housing construction in the first place. Why doesn't he accept my common sense plan to require cities boost housing completions by 15% in order to get federal money so that we build homes, not bureaucracy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I hate to break it to the Leader of the Opposition, but a TikTok video is not a plan. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to work, to roll up our sleeves and deliver for Canadians every step of the way. While the Conservatives are flip-flopping all over the place, refusing to stand with workers, refusing to stand with Ukraine, watching too much far-right American TV. We're going to stay focused on delivering concretely for Canadians with the lowest deficit in the G7, the best debt-to-GDP ratio in the G7, the best AAA credit rating of all countries around the world except for the top three, of which we're part. We're going to continue delivering for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Bloc Québécois. Mr. Speaker, a few years ago on a magazine cover, it said just because we're laughing doesn't mean it's funny. According to the Canadian Human Rights Commission, celebrating Christmas with trees, family, music and gifts, that's systemic racism. I wonder whether Santa Claus is racist. I wonder whether snow has become racist. Mr. Speaker, according to the Prime Minister, is Christmas racist? I have to say that I'm not convinced that that question goes to the government administration, but I see that the Right Honourable Prime Minister is on his feet, so I'll give him the floor. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The Honourable Leader of the Bloc Québécois. The Canadian Human Rights Commission comes under government administration. The Prime Minister of Canada should stand up and answer. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to stand up and try to answer a totally ridiculous question. Obviously, Christmas is not racist. This is a country of diversity, a country that celebrates not just our personal, individual beliefs, but we share and celebrate the events of our neighbors, too. That's what makes this country so rich. We share our celebrations. It makes us a more rich and diverse country, and we will keep doing that. The Bloc is always looking for ridiculous ways to pick fights. I can't get over it. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, this is the procedure. It's the creation of a national culture requires welcoming, inclusion, and so on. It's not through exclusion or rejection by the receiving culture. Quebec, we will be celebrating we're having a Christmas celebration in my riding in a few days. Do I have to cancel that because of what the Canadian Human Rights Commission has said, because it's racist? That's my question to the Prime Minister. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. No, Mr. Speaker. We have to celebrate everything. Christmas, Hanukkah, all the different festivals and celebrations that we have in our ridings and all across the country. Our diversity is a profound source of wealth. There are lots of issues in the world today, but I think we should all take a moment to celebrate one another's celebrations. I think that's only a good thing. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Let me be the first of the season to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
What a beautiful celebration Christmas is.
Including Christmas, Mr. Speaker. But unfortunately, after 8 years, this Prime Minister promises nothing but a carbon-taxed lump of coal for Canadians. Will he get off the backs of Canadians so that they can enjoy beautiful gifts, maybe even a turkey and a warm meal around the Christmas table this season?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to point out that we're the government that's phasing out coal, Mr. Speaker, over the opposition of the Leader of the Opposition. We're continue to build a better and brighter future for all Canadians. And that includes fighting against climate change so we can ensure that we keep a stronger future for Canadian children to be able to go sledding, but also so that we can make sure that they have better jobs into the future. The climate denialism of the Conservative Party of Canada is putting future white Christmases at risk, and that's why on this side of the House we stand for Christmas.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that has to be the angriest and most caustic Christmas message I've ever seen. This is a guy, he hasn't phased out coal despite his theatrics over there, Mr. Speaker. What he's doing is phasing out food because Canadians can't afford it now as he raises carbon taxes on the wonderful farmers that bring it to our table. Why won't he axe the tax on farmers so that Canadians can eat, heat, and house themselves? And why doesn't he be a little less like Scrooge and a little more like Santa Claus?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one of the issues we have is when he talks about the impact of our price on pollution on farmers, he includes farmers in Ukraine. He includes farmers who are busy feeding us and feeding people around the world. He has stood against the free trade deal that Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainian people want us to have because he pretends we're imposing a price on pollution on them, which of course we are not. But that is the extent to which he will spin up to make a political attack when it is completely unfounded. We will be there to stand with Ukraine and with Christmas, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Can't even have a little bit of fun in this place, Mr. Speaker, because of course once he's off script, that's when he starts rambling all over the map, unable to stay on any subject possible. The question was about the cost of food. After he's forced Canadians to line up in bread lines that we have not seen since the Great Depression. 2 million, a record-smashing 2 million visits to a food bank. And now he sees it as the time to quadruple the tax on the farmers that feed us. Will he stop blocking common sense Conservative Bill C2, 3, 4 to take the tax off the farmers so that Canadians can afford Christmas?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
97% of farm fuel emissions are already exempt from our price on pollution. That is what the Leader of the Opposition refuses to accept. There are many factors that go into the rise in food prices, not just in Canada and around the world, and the war in Ukraine is certainly one of them. So the fact that they have not chosen to stand with Ukraine against Russia in this difficult time is very much relevant, no matter how much they try to dodge and spin out of it. They're not standing with Ukraine at this difficult time.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This Prime Minister would like Canadians to think about anything other than their hungry stomachs after 8 years in office. He would like Canadians to forget that he has doubled the cost of rent, that he wants to quadruple the carbon tax, that he's given us the worst interest rate hikes in Canadian history. The least he could do is back off on his plan to quadruple the tax on our farmers. So, will he stop blocking Bill C-234, the common sense Conservative bill to take the tax off our farmers so that our Canadian people can afford to eat?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that might be a little more of a credible question if it hadn't been for the fact that the Conservative Party delayed implementation of our Affordability Act that brought in more competition on groceries, that is moving forward to stabilize grocery prices and support Canadians through this difficult time. They've also stood against other initiatives we're supporting Canadians with, like dental care for young Canadians, but also for seniors as is coming in the coming months. They've stood against supports like our grocery rebate. They've stood against the investments that we're busy making to support Canadians right across the country because they stand for austerity and cuts.
That's right.
The Honourable Member from Vancouver East.
This summer, Canadians saw refugees rendered homeless in the city of Toronto. With pressure, the federal government finally agreed to provide some support, but it's not enough. Tonight, another refugee family will be turned away from a shelter again because they're full. As the nights get colder, things will only get worse. Mayor Olivia Child negotiated a historic new deal with the province of Ontario, and it calls on the federal government to deliver for refugees. Will the Prime Minister do their part so that refugees do not have to sleep on the streets and be rendered homeless this winter?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over the past number of years, we've transferred hundreds of millions of dollars to cities across the country, including Toronto, to support with the challenges they're facing with overburdened shelters, with people seeking solace and places to sleep. And we're going to continue to be there as partners to the City of Toronto. We're glad to see the province of Ontario finally stepping up to do part of their share, but we need to continue to work all together. The province needs to do more on taking on its responsibilities, and we will continue to be there as a partner in keeping Canadians and all who come to this country safe and warm.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member from Timmins, James Bay.
Well, this Prime Minister has given billions for EV battery plants, but he has no plan for supplying Canadian critical minerals to make these EV battery operations a Canadian success. There are metal deposits right now in Sudbury, Thompson, Timmins that are ready to go into operation, but they need a federal partner. Without a tax credit strategy, the auto industry is going to be getting its metal from China, Indonesia, or Congo, places with much lower environmental, human rights, and wage standards. Why is this Prime Minister continuing to botch a made-in-Canada solution so that we can be a true clean energy leader?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was extremely pleased to welcome the two presidents of the European Union and the European Commission to Newfoundland, Labrador last week to talk about everything we're doing to invest in critical minerals across the country as part of that supply chain that the world needs. Canadian clean aluminum, Canadian clean steel, Canadian responsibly extracted and developed critical minerals are going to be an essential part of the supply chains of the future for our allies around the world. That is why we're stepping up with a critical mineral strategy. That's why we're investing in a strong and green mining future for Canada. We will be there for the future jobs in Canada.
Hear, hear.
L'honorable député de Sudbury.
Mr. Speaker, the vitality of rural media is extremely important, especially in minority official language communities. With the Online News Act, this government will be supporting Canadian media. Can the Prime Minister tell the House about the status of this bill? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Sudbury for her question and her hard work. I am very pleased to announce that we have an agreement with Google so that this web giant has to pay its fair share for online news. Google will be investing $100 million a year in our newsrooms. This historic agreement shows that our Online News Act is working. Despite the ideological opposition of the Conservative Party, we will be guaranteeing a sustainable and independent future for local news in Canada.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Everything the Prime Minister has said about his carbon tax is proven false. Most recently says that farmers only pay a teeny tiny carbon tax. Well, it turns out that tax adds up to well over $100,000 a year for just one mushroom farm in my riding. The Prime Minister now wants to quadruple the carbon tax on those farmers. So, very simple question for Carleton Mushrooms. How should they pay for the $400,000 in new taxes? Should they A, raise prices on consumers, or B, cut production so that we import more of our food from dirty foreign economies?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, farmers across this country, including in the member opposite's riding, know how important it is to fight climate change and protect their investments and future generations of farmers in this country. That's why we're stepping up with significant investments to support innovation in farming and agriculture, to support direct investments to change the way we're doing things so we can do them cleaner and greener in ways that continue to support Canadians and continue to build a stronger future for everyone. We know farmers care deeply about the land and its future, and we are working with them, not denying the reality that they're facing.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is denying the reality that they're facing. I was asking specifically about Carleton Mushrooms. So let's do the math. They're paying over $100,000 today in the Prime Minister's carbon tax. He wants to quadruple that to $400,000 a year. How will they pay for that $400,000? Will they raise prices on consumers who already can't afford food? Or will they just cut production so Canadians buy more expensive foreign food from polluting countries? Yeah. Which one?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, these are the questions that producers and indeed families right across the country are asking about facing an uncertain future with increased climate change, with increased challenges from global supply chains, including related to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine that the Conservatives seem to be on the wrong side of. And we are going to continue to work with farmers, with agricultural producers across the country to invest, to innovate, to be able to continue to feed Canadians, and to be able to do that for decades to come, despite a changing climate.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So after I asked the question twice, he said, yes, these are the questions that Canadian farmers are facing. So finally, he gets that far. The Medeiros farm is paying $100,000 in carbon taxes. One farm. He wants to quadruple that to well over $400,000. So I'm asking him once again, how are they going to pay that tax? Are they going to raise prices on consumers or cut production so we buy more foreign food from polluting countries? Which one is it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize this reality, and that is why we are working with farmers and industries across this country to adapt to the reality of climate change and the challenges of global supply chains. And I can tell you, we will reach out to those farmer community, and we will reach out to that farms and talk to them about how they can meet the coming challenges in the coming years. We will follow up with them and ensure that we're doing everything we can to support them into a changing future.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
All right, but this is even more progress. Right now he says he's going to follow up with Carleton Mushrooms, Mr. Speaker. This is a farm that pays $100,000 in carbon taxes now. He wants to quadruple it to $400,000. They don't have any alternative sources. They either power their operations with natural gas or propane, just like farmers have to dry their grains and heat their barns using those same fuel sources. There are no alternatives. So when the Prime Minister follows up with Carleton Mushrooms, how is he going to advise them to pay the $400,000 carbon tax bill he's sending them? Is it by raising prices on consumers or cutting food production so we buy foreign food from polluting countries?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I look forward to hearing about the sustainable practices that Carleton Mushrooms is already putting into place and working with them on how we can continue to move forward on supporting them into a brighter future. We recognize the reality of climate change on this side of the House at least, and we know that's going to bring challenges to families like the Medeiros. But we're going to be there to support them like we're supporting farm families right across the country.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-Lille. Mr. Speaker, $2 billion to support English in Quebec since 1995. That's the federal government's action plan for official languages in Quebec. And that's not all. The Prime Minister has invested another $800 million in Quebec in the official languages action plan. Once again, this is going to benefit English. How many times do I have to repeat this? French is the language that is declining in Quebec. The Anglicization of Quebec doesn't need help. It's going great. Will the Prime Minister earmark our tax money for the French language? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, protecting our two official languages throughout the country is a major priority for this government. That is why we are investing to protect official language minority communities throughout the country. The reality is that we're also doing a lot more to protect French, including with hundreds of millions of dollars every year that we send to Quebec for Francization. We will always be there to protect French throughout the country, including in Quebec. And we are the first federal government that has recognized the precarious position of French in Quebec. We will be there to support French. The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-Lille. Mr. Speaker, how many times do we have to repeat that English is not a minority language? There are 360 million Anglophones around us in North America. Even Quebecers have to speak English, because in Canada, bilingualism is always up to Francophones. We are desperately fighting in Quebec. We are fighting tooth and nail to protect French and Indigenous languages. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is undoing everything that we accomplish by offering another $800 million to the Anglophone community in Quebec. When will he stop encouraging the Anglicization of Quebec? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, this is mere gibberish from the bloc that is picking fights. The reality is that we are investing hundreds of millions of dollars every year. We give it to Quebec to invest in supporting the French language. We will be here to help both of our official languages throughout the country. And that means that even if the Bloc Québécois doesn't care at all about Francophones outside Quebec, we will continue to stand for them. We will continue to protect our two official languages throughout the country, wherever they are in a minority situation.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition. The Prime Minister announced $15 billion for one battery plant. For context, that works out to $1,000 in cost for every single Canadian family. When reports came out that the jobs were going to foreign replacement workers, he called it disinformation. Next day, his minister said, oh, there's one. And then they said, oh, there's a few. And then the company said that there are 900. And yesterday, his Minister of Employment said he's going to do an investigation and get to the bottom of it. Mr. Speaker, what has Sherlock Holmes been able to find?
Once again, I'd like to remind all members not to engage as much as possible in mock names for minister. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, we see the extent to which the Leader of the Opposition will go to explain why he stands against investments that are going to create tens of thousands of great jobs across Windsor, across St. Thomas, in Montérégie in Quebec with Northvolt, and right across the country in battery supply chains. He is opposed to investments that strengthen the future of our communities because he doesn't believe in climate change. But we know, and Canadians know, that these investments make a difference. In terms of jobs, 2,300 local Canadian construction jobs, 2,500 permanent Canadian jobs just for the Stellantis investment.
There you go.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, we will sign contracts that ensure that Canadian tax dollars only ever go to Canadian workers. The only way to find out if anything the Prime Minister says on this $15 billion deal is true is if he releases the contract. Yesterday, Common Sense Conservatives put forward a motion to that effect. Liberals amended the motion to say that there should be, and I quote, no notes, no recording devices, and that all copies be destroyed. These are quotes, Mr. Speaker. What in this $15 billion contract is the Prime Minister so determined to hide?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Now, I know that the Leader of the Opposition hasn't had many other jobs other than an MP for the past 19 years, but the reality is there are commercial and competitive reasons to be careful about this.
Order. Order. The Honourable Prime Minister has 25 seconds left on the clock.
19 years as a member of Parliament. Perhaps we need to make sure that they understand commercial sensitivities to guarantee good jobs for Canadians. Our investments that have been supported by labour unions, that are supported by local leadership, understand that we're building not just jobs for right now, but jobs for coming generations, and working hand in hand with companies to make those investments in Canada is what this government is focused on.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What he's focused on is diverting Canadian tax dollars away from union workers in places like Windsor to foreign replacement workers from South Korea. The Canadian Building Trades Union said that they could do all the work that the Prime Minister has chosen to outsource to foreign workers, and that they will lose $300 million in wages as a result of the replacement workers the Prime Minister intends to bring in. So if anything the Prime Minister is saying about this $15 billion contract is true, why is he so afraid to release the contract?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, training up an already world-class Canadian workforce in more innovative and highly specialized machinery is good for the thousands of long-term quality jobs that Canadians are gaining with these investments. It's obvious that the Conservative leader is yet again looking for a slogan to justify his ideological opposition to investing in Canadians' futures. His crusade against facts shows us once again that he'll do anything to advance his own personal political interest, even if that means ignoring the likes of Unifor and other unions and ripping up Canadian jobs.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member from Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister on Bill C-57. This fall, as the Ukrainian people fight to defend themselves against Russia's genocidal invasion, our government signed a historic, modernized Canada-Ukraine free trade agreement with the government of Ukraine. It's important to remember that the Ukrainian people are not just fighting for their own freedom and survival, they're also fighting for us, and we need to be fighting for them. Now, most MPs voted in favor of this free trade agreement, but every single Conservative MP voted against it. They voted unanimously against supporting Ukraine. So my question to the Prime Minister is, will he share with Canadians why the Canada-Ukraine free trade agreement is so important to Canada and to Ukraine?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Etobicoke Centre for his question and, of course, for his long-standing commitment to the Ukrainian people. While Ukrainians are fighting for freedom and their very right to exist, the Conservative leader is pandering to far-right Republican-style politics that is creeping into his party. By voting against a crucial bill for Ukraine, that leader is playing into the Kremlin's hands. On this side of the House, without question, we will never back down in our support of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister could not care less about Ukraine. He only cares about the fact that he's losing the carbon tax debate so badly that he would suggest that anyone who's against the carbon tax is against Ukraine. The exact opposite is true. He's not bringing in a free trade agreement with Ukraine. We already have a free trade agreement with Ukraine, which conservatives Conservatives initiated and he had no part in. So will the Prime Minister stop trying to distract from his losing debate on the carbon tax and on the suffering Canadians here at home, and finally take responsibility for all the misery he has caused?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Now, not only does the Leader of the Opposition thinks he knows better than everyone else in this House, he thinks he knows better than Volodymyr Zelensky what Ukraine needs right now, because President Zelensky and his government are asking us to pass this modernizing of Canada-Ukraine's free trade deal. And the Leader of the Opposition is saying, no, 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 we don't support it because it imposes a carbon price on Ukrainians. Of course, the fact that the Ukrainian embassy is pointing out that no, it does no such thing, and indeed they've had a price on pollution for years now, is proof that he's just trying to make an ideological argument.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
His ideological argument is that he would block selling Canadian natural gas to force Europeans to buy Russians' gas. He would give the money to the Kremlin rather than giving it to Canadian workers. He exported a gigantic turbine to Putin to pump gas into Europe and fund the war over there. Meanwhile, he opposes a carbon tax here at home. He can try all he wants to impose the carbon tax through a trade agreement or by delaying the carbon tax election. But here's the fact. I will win the carbon tax election, and I will axe the tax. When will he get it through his head?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we recognize that even as the world is in a complicated place because of multiple global factors like Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, we need to stay focused on being there for Canadians both now and into the future. And that's exactly what we're doing. Our recent fall economic statement delivers more housing for Canadians right across the country. It delivers stability and competition in grocery prices, and it builds on the jobs and careers that Canadians are going to be able to benefit from in a net zero world. The Conservative Party's climate denialism is not building a stronger economy for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, that got him to back down real quick, didn't it, Mr. Speaker? We know this Prime Minister is ashamed of the hideous record he has of sending 2 million people to a food bank, of doubling the rent, of making it so 9 out of 10 young people cannot afford homes, where there's a massive increase in the number of people who have jobs that have to resort to breadlines in order to eat. He doesn't talk about the middle class and those working hard to join it anymore. He's trying to distract Canadians every day and every way from the misery he has caused at home. Why doesn't he take responsibility for that misery and finally do his job?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have made a choice to look at Canadians who are struggling right now, who are hurting right now, and they've made the choice to amplify those fears, to exaggerate them, to gin them up, to make them angry about everything and point out that everything is broken in this country. Well, I disagree, Mr. Speaker, both with the substance of his argument and the way he's going about it. I know what Canadians are doing. They're rolling up their sleeves. They're leaning on each other. They're building that better future by fighting climate change, by investing in their neighbors, by being there to support each other. He might want to run on anger in a couple of years. We're going to run on a positive, ambitious vision for this country, which Canadians...
The Honourable Member from Surrey Newton.
Mr. Speaker, workers have built this country and they will build the Canada of tomorrow. Our government recently introduced an important legislation that bans replacement workers. While the opposition pretends to be for the workers, but they have stalled the passing of the legislation. Can the Prime Minister tell the workers from across the country why we have their back?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Surrey Newton for his question and his hard work. The Canadian Labour Congress was in Ottawa this week to express their frustration with the Conservative leaders' silence on our government's replacement workers legislation. The last time that party stayed silent on a piece of legislation, they voted against Ukraine. For the 19 years he's been elected to this House, that leader has always voted against unions, including with Stephen Harper's Bill 377 and 525. And it's increasingly obvious he will always stand against workers.
The Honourable Member from Nunavut.
The federal housing advocate has reported that the federal government fails to protect Inuit right to housing. Inuit have to take shifts to sleep because of overcrowding. In the fall economic statement, the government is spending more to settle historic injustices than they are to help Indigenous peoples in housing. Liberals have to get this right, invest in Indigenous housing, and end these injustices. When will this Prime Minister finally invest in what's needed, or will they wait until he is forced to by the courts?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Kuyanamik for the question. I know how important it is to continue to work with the governments of the territories and Indigenous partners like ITK to build more housing. We've made significant announcements and significant investments in creating more housing, but there is, as my honourable colleague has said, much more to do. We will continue to be there with partners, as partners for the North, as we invest in housing, as we create more opportunities. The
Honourable Member from Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, 35 doctors and addiction experts recently wrote to the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions recommending significant reform or outright abolishment of the Safe Supply strategy. Mr. Speaker, harm reduction without treatment does not break the cycle of addiction. In Toronto and across Canada, the strategy is not working and wreaking havoc on communities. Mr. Speaker, without a federal exemption, injection sites would be illegal. Will the Prime Minister listen to the experts and either reform Safe Supply and provide funding to keep host neighborhoods safe, or eliminate injection sites altogether?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is a scientific and proven evidentiary fact. Safe supply and harm reduction save lives. We know there is much more to do, and we will continue to do it in working with partners across the country, in investing in more supports for communities, in moving forward in a way that is grounded in science to save lives and support people. Part of our $200 billion investment in health over the next 10 years is aimed at support for mental health and addictions. We are there, but we will remain grounded in science, not ideology.
Avant que je passe aux appels,
before moving to points of order,
attention of members to the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Jill Balser, Minister of Labour, Skills and Immigration for the great province of Nova Scotia. Je reconnais sur un appel au règlement.
On a point of order, the Honourable Member for La Prairie. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You already mentioned that in the House, questions have to be related to government management or administration, and that they had to be relevant in order for the House to entertain them. Earlier, the leader of the Bloc Québécois asked a question of the Prime Minister, and you were of the view that it was not related to government administration. I'd like to present what the Canadian Human Rights Commission ruled, and they're part of the federal administration. The Commission said that statutory holidays related to Christianity are evidence of systemic discrimination toward religious minorities in Canada and form part of Canada's colonial history. Mr. Speaker, what I'm asking of you is to be much more circumspect in exercising your judgment on the relevance of questions, because in this case, the Bloc leader's question, I think you made the wrong decision about that. Thank you. I'd like to thank the honourable member for La Prairie for raising that point. I thank the honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly for having raised that point. From what the chair heard in the first question, there was no reference to that document. And if that was the case, I'll review the blues. And if that was the case, I will apologize to the member for Belleuil-Chambly if that's what happened. I will come back to the member if necessary. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member from Sarnia-Lambton on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we're consistent in the way that we apply the rules in this House. During statements by members, one of the members opposite accused all the Conservatives of being complicit with the Russians, which we know is not factual since we've all been banned from Russia. And so, Mr. Speaker, when one of our members had to withdraw a comment, he also had to apologize, and I respect that you asked the member to withdraw the comment, but I didn't hear the apology, and I would give the member opposite the chance to do it now. Thank you so much.
He's fired up.
I thank the honourable member for raising this point of order. The chair did ask the member to withdraw the comment, felt that that was important. The chair, on a prima facie look at it, would see a distinction between the two situations. But I thank the honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton for raising this point of order. The honourable member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the statement made by the member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes, the member for Mississauga, Aaron Mills, was making a number of very clearly unparliamentary statements. One of them is audible on the video at the 2:20:30 mark. I would prefer not to offer specifics if it's not necessary, provided the member is prepared to apologize and withdraw. But I'm happy to provide more specifics if necessary.
Wow. Who's that? Who was it? Who is that?
Ikra. Is it not, it's not Ikra?
Is that correct?
The honourable member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan. I am going to review Hansard to take a look at that, and I will come back to this chamber if necessary. Thank you.
It being 3:32, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred division, the deferred recorded division on the amendment of Mr. Seaback to the motion to concur in the 10th report of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. Call in the members.
Just making sure. One last second. All right. The question is as follows. Mr. Jennis, seconded by Mrs. Wagenthal, moves that the 10th report of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development, presented on Tuesday, February 14, 2023, be concurred in. The amendment, Mr. Seaback, seconded by Mrs. Stubbs, move the following amendment, that the motion be amended by deleting all the words after the word that and substituting the following. Quote,